Thanks for watching. All opinions are my own and not of any employer. Let's get started.
All right, let's talk about AI. It's completely changing the game and, well, just about everything, from how we find new medicines to how we run our businesses. But, and this is a big but, with all that incredible power comes some pretty serious risks. We're talking about things that can impact our privacy, our society's fairness, you name it. So today, we're going to break down one of the most important guides for navigating this wild new world, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework.
You see, at its heart, AI is this two-sided coin. On one side, you've got this incredible promise, speed, efficiency, insights that could solve some of humanity's biggest problems. But flip that coin over, and you've got the peril. A poorly built AI can take existing biases in our society and crank them up to 11. It can open up massive security holes and honestly make some truly catastrophic decisions at a scale we've just never dealt with before.
So that leads us to the million-dollar question for literally anyone working with this tech. How do we do it? How do we keep that incredibly delicate risk-reward scale in balance? How do we get all the amazing benefits while protecting ourselves from the really scary downsides? And that, my friends, is exactly where this framework comes in. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework, or RMF for short, is a guide from the US government's top tech and standards experts. Now, the best way to think about it is like a building code for AI. A building code doesn't tell you exactly what color to paint the walls, right? But it gives you the absolute essential rules to make sure whatever you build is safe, stable, and isn't going to collapse. That's what this is for AI. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of how this building code works, we really need to understand what it is we're trying to build in the first place. The whole point of the framework is to help create something called trustworthy AI. And that idea of trustworthiness, it's built on 7 key pillars. First up, an AI has to be valid and reliable. This is table stakes. It just means the system is accurate and that you can depend on it. I mean, think about it. If the AI is just making stuff up or giving you garbage output, none of the other fancy characteristics matter, right? The whole thing is useless from the get-go. Next, it has to be safe. And yeah, this one seems pretty obvious, but it's so critical. A trustworthy AI is one that's designed from the very beginning not to put people, their health, their property, or the environment in danger. It means you've built in guardrails to prevent real-world harm. Third, the system has got to be secure and resilient. This is huge because you have to assume that if an AI system is valuable, someone, somewhere, is gonna try to break it. They might try to poison the data it learns from to mess up its results. They might even try to steal the model itself. A resilient system is built to withstand those attacks and not just fall apart at the first sign of trouble. Then we get to accountability and transparency. This is all about tackling the black box problem. You know, where data goes in one end, a decision pops out the other, and we have absolutely no clue what happened in between. A transparent system lets us peek under the hood and see the process. And an accountable one means there are actual humans who are responsible for what the AI does. And that leads directly to our next point, explainability and interpretability. Now, these two sound kind of the same, but there's a key difference. Explainability tells us how the AI got to an answer, like the technical steps it took. But interpretability is about why that answer makes sense. So, if an AI suggests a medical diagnosis, a doctor needs to be able to look at the reasoning and say, okay, I can interpret that and it makes clinical sense to me. Number 6 is all about privacy. Look, you wouldn't trust a friend if you told them a secret and they immediately blasted it all over social media. It's the same with AI. A trustworthy system has privacy baked in from the start, so the personal data we give it doesn't get leaked or misused. It's about protecting our basic dignity. And finally, number 7, a trustworthy AI has to be fair, and that means harmful bias is actively managed. The system can't be creating or, just as importantly, reinforcing unfair outcomes for any group of people. This is one of the hardest ones to get right because bias can sneak in from everywhere: the data, the algorithm, even the people building it. But it's absolutely essential if we want AI that works for everyone. Okay, so those 7 characteristics, that's the destination. That's what a trustworthy AI is supposed to look like. But how in the world do we actually get there? Well, the framework gives us a really practical 4-step process to turn these big ideas into real action. These are the 4 core functions: govern, map, measure, and manage. And it is so important to see this not as a checklist you do once and you're done. No, this is a cycle. It's a continuous loop of improvement that you repeat over and over again through the entire life of the AI system. Let's start with govern. Now, govern isn't really step one. It's more like the foundation that everything else is built on. It's about creating a culture of risk management across your entire organization. This is where you figure out who's responsible for what, make sure you're following the law, and set the whole strategy for how you're going to deal with AI risk. It touches everything. Next up is the map function. This is basically your homework phase. Before you even think about building anything, you have to establish the context. You've got to ask the big questions. What is this AI even for? Who's going to be involved? Not just the builders, but the users and the communities that might be affected by it. You map out all the potential good things and bad things that could happen. So once you've mapped out the whole landscape, you move on to measure. This is where you start actually tracking the risks you identified. And the framework is pretty cool here because it's flexible. You can use quantitative stuff, hard numbers, specific metrics, but you can also use qualitative methods, maybe something as simple as a high, medium, low risk rating. The key is to have a consistent way to test and monitor your risks. And that brings us to manage. This is where the rubber meets the road. Based on everything you've mapped and measured, you have to prioritize the biggest risks and then decide what to do about them. Maybe you mitigate a risk by adding a new safety feature. Maybe a really small risk, you just accept it. Or maybe you transfer it, like by getting insurance. This is all about taking action and then watching to make sure your actions are actually working. So we have the goals, those 7 characteristics, and we have the process, the 4 functions. But this is all still pretty high level, right? How does a real company working on a real project make this stuff concrete and specific to what they're doing? Well, they do it using something called profiles. This is the secret sauce that makes the framework actually useful. A profile is just a customized version of the framework designed for one specific use case, like, say, an AI tool that screens resumes for a job. A company will create a current profile to see where they are right now, like a "you are here" map. Then they create a target profile for where they want to be. And that gap between where they are and where they want to go, that becomes their concrete, actionable to-do list. So, who is this all for? It might be easy to think, okay, this is some super technical document just for data scientists and engineers. But honestly, one of the most powerful things about this framework is that it makes it clear that everyone has a role to play across the entire AI lifecycle. The framework calls all these people AI actors, and as you can see, it's a huge group. It's the designers and data scientists in the planning stage, it's the machine learning experts who actually build and test the models, it's the people who deploy and operate the systems, and maybe most importantly, it's the end users and the communities that are impacted by the AI. What this really drives home is that making AI trustworthy is a team sport. It's a collective responsibility. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? The NIST AI risk management framework is so important because it takes these big, fuzzy ideas like fairness and accountability and turns them into a practical step-by-step process. It pushes companies to think beyond just the tech and to consider the real-world impact on people and the planet. And crucially, it creates a shared language that everyone, from engineers to regulators to the public, can use to talk about and manage the risks of AI. It gives us a common playbook for building trust. But that leaves us with one last massive question. In a world where AI is changing at lightning speed, is a voluntary, non-binding set of guidelines like this going to be enough to make sure AI is built and used responsibly? That's the big question we all need to keep asking.
Thanks for watching our content. Please like, subscribe, and share.